So I want to continue with this subject of faith that we talked about last week. I think that it's a time for us to maybe emphasize faith a little bit. Hang in here. The imagery from last week of the guy standing in the field, refusing to surrender to the enemy and standing on the promises of God, saying, I will not be moved. I mean, that to me is really powerful. As I said last week, I really love those two verses. They really speak to me, especially when I'm going through something and I'm not really sure what's going on or how it's going to turn out. It's in God's hands. All I can do is trust the Lord. All I can do is stand. When you've done all you can do, stand, and then stand some more. Don't be moved. And I think that during this time for the church, as we go through this pastoral leadership transition, and we're moving ahead, and there's a certain amount of feeling overwhelmed, I'm sure, for you. Some of you have expressed that to Michelle and me. We do at certain times, thinking about what we're going to do. But it's just a good reminder to be in that place where we're going to trust God and we're not going to be moved. And the other side of last week was the blind man that wouldn't keep quiet, that he knew Jesus was there and he had a need, and he was going to let Jesus know his need. And in a way, that's kind of like a call to prayer. It's more than that, obviously, but the thought that I'm not going to keep quiet, I'm going to let God know help me, have mercy on me, this is my need, this is what's going on. And I think this is time for us to really be serious about our faith, because the enemy wants to jack us around, looking for opportunities to maybe manipulate us or cause us to question some things. And if we get off of faith a little bit, or if we get out of the zone of trusting God on something and start to wonder can turn to worry. Worry is sin. Sin opens the door, and from there it gets worse even still. So it's a time for faith. I want to read a scripture passage. Officially, it would be, you would say, I'm going to read a pericope, which is a healing story of Jesus. It's the encapsulated story. This is the second miracle of Jesus in the book of John. The first miracle, he turns the water into wine at the wedding at Cana of Galilee. And so that happens because Jesus comes out of Judea, he comes out of the south, and he comes back up into the northern region of Galilee, where Cana is, Nazareth is, and then they're up in the hills, the central hills, and then sloping down to the Sea of Galilee, then you have Capernaum and Magdala, and the few other places where Jesus ministered along the Sea of Galilee there. So he's coming back up into that northern region. And it's the healing of the nobleman's son. The nobleman, he's just referred to as the nobleman. And in some cases we have people identified, and it tells us that they are Jews or they are Gentiles. Tells us that they are, we can understand their perspective. It's not a class thing. It's to help understand the story, perspective of why is this remarkable. In this case, the nobleman's son is likely someone who is part of the court of Herod. Now, this wouldn't be Herod the Great, who when Jesus was born, actually he had the babies killed in Bethlehem. That was Herod the Great. And when he died, then Mary, Joseph, and the baby came back from Egypt, right? This would be one of Herod the Great's sons, because when Herod died, then the region was kind of divided up into his sons, and the area of Galilee went to Antipas, Herod Antipas. And so the nobleman of this story is probably somebody, a high official in the court of Herod Antipas. So you think about that. The Herods were not known for their faith, were they? They were not known for their devotion to God. They were known for their lust for power, their lust for riches, and they sold out to the Romans so that they could achieve what they wanted, which was to be the rulers of the Jews. So this nobleman comes from a culture that is not open to God and is certainly not open to Jesus. And yet what happens is the nobleman heard about the miracle at Cana of Galilee. He heard about the stuff happening down in Jerusalem. He heard about the stories of Jesus. When he heard that Jesus had come up into Galilee then, the nobleman lives in Capernaum down by the sea. He travels up to meet Jesus. And he meets him in Cana. And so he travels a ways to find Jesus. Now remember last week, talked about how so many people, Jesus said, your faith has made you well. Your faith has healed you. Go in faith, or go in peace. Your faith has healed you. All those different kinds of statements. So notice how it's a little bit different here. But faith is still really important. So this is John chapter 4, beginning in verse 43. Now after the 2 days he departed from there and went to Galilee. For Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things he did in Jerusalem at the feast, for they also had gone to the feast. So Jesus came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and implored him to come down to Capernaum, out of the mountains down to the seashore. Come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said to him, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will by no means believe. It's an interesting statement. Now, Galileans had a reputation, and that's why we hear in the Gospels many times, can anything good come out of Galilee? The Messiah wouldn't come out of Galilee. No, nothing good comes out of Galilee. They have a reputation, and it's kind of well earned, because apparently they're kind of like people from Missouri, the show me state. They're like Thomas. Unless I see it, I won't believe it. And so there is a track record that the Galileans don't receive Jesus. And yet in this story, as Jesus comes out, it says the Galileans receive him in verse 45. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things he did in Jerusalem at the feast. So things are changing, right? But there is this kind of reputation. So commentators, if you look at a commentary, it will say that Jesus is speaking to that. He's speaking to his general dissatisfaction of people not having faith in what he's doing, or in the Word of God. And so it's almost like an irksome thing that Jesus is saying, according to those commentators. Unless you people see signs and wonders, you just won't believe. Unless you see miracles, you just won't believe. And there may be truth to that. Most all of the commentators that I read are way smarter than I am. So opinions that I have to keep that in mind. But because Michelle and I have traveled the path of faith that we have traveled, which is, I guess, from what I can see, a little bit different than most people. You've all heard the stories, I'm sure, so forgive me for this, but she starts out in a Presbyterian church. I start out in a Baptist church. After we're married, we decide we want to go to church. We go to a Presbyterian church. And I remember Michelle saying, let's go to a Presbyterian church because they leave you alone. So we go to a Presbyterian church, and sure enough, they left us alone. And then after a season, we were saved. We were saved in a Pentecostal meeting and just hit with the power of God. I mean, we were literally knocked to the ground. And we experienced the power of God like, oh my gosh. And we'd been dabbling in a United Methodist church, and God sends us back there. So Presbyterian, Baptist, United Methodist, Pentecostal, and then we get called into ministry, and we go to a interdenominational seminary, serve in the United Methodist Church, get called out of that, go independent with International Ministerial Fellowship. We get in the river with all that God is doing in these renewal centers around the country. We see miracles, like crazy miracles, and I mean like firsthand stuff right in front of us. I was just reading newsletter from our ministry, New Wine Covenant Ministries. I was reading the newsletter, found it as I'm going through files, part of this process we're going through. I'm going through my stuff, and pitching a lot of stuff, and I come across this newsletter, New Wine Covenant Ministries. And it's where we're at this renewal center. And there are articles, and one article is written by Jackie, and I don't think Jackie's more than maybe 14, 15 years old. Maybe 16, I think she had her driver's license. Anyway, so Jackie writes this article about gold dust and about getting it on her, mom having it, me having it, and mom praying for them, and they get it on them, and they go up to the youth group and they pray for everybody, and it's on everybody and dripping like oil off of kids' hands. Teenager writing this, and it's just, it reminded me of some of the stuff we saw, the miracle stuff we saw. By the way, I made copies of that newsletter, and I put them up in the entryway. If you want a copy of it, you can grab one. It's fun to read. But anyway, we saw people, prayed for people, and had miraculous gold teeth appear in their mouths, gold dust all over them. We had people miraculously healed. One guy, I've said this before, comes to a family camp we're at with a cane. He can hardly walk. God heals him, and he leaves like he's in his prime without the cane. Early on, God healed a sprained ankle I had. We were playing volleyball at a healing conference. Just incredible stuff. We saw deliverances that would just blow your mind, the power of God. So many people marvelously saved. People getting saved that were the kind of people that, people that know them say, well, there's no way that person's going to get saved, and marvelously saved. On and on and on and on and on. Seen so many amazing things. Just here in this church that is now Oasis, we've seen miracles here that are just fantastic. Many of you are miracles, or you're part of stories, miracle stories. The one that is at the top of the list is Joyce being healed of a stroke. Miraculously healed of a stroke. Check it out on YouTube. Joyce Olson, healed of stroke. And I think it's under Burien Church or something. You can find it if you search for it. Whew. It just goes on and on and on. So when I read this, I know the scholars are smart people. But when I read this, and Jesus says, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will by no means believe. I read that different than what they say, because I know how I believe now because of what I've seen and what I've seen God do. Yes, I believed when I was saved before any of that. And I have full confidence that that salvation was genuine and deep and complete. But walking by faith from there on, because salvation is a doorway we step through. It's not the end. It's really the beginning. And walking by faith through that isn't always easy. That's why we have terms like backslidden. We have people that fall away. We know people that no longer believe in God. All those kinds of things. And I think that there is a depth of faith in God that comes by experiencing God. And that's why I say we have got to press in. We've got to continually press into God and allow God to reveal himself to us. So Jesus said, unless you see signs and wonders, you'll by no means believe. The nobleman said to him, Sir, come down before my child dies. If Jesus was speaking to the nobleman never heard it, because he just acts like, I'm here because I need my son healed. Please come heal my son. Jesus said to him, Go your way, your son lives. Jesus didn't say anything about your faith has healed your son. He didn't say, okay, go ahead, as you've believed, so it'll be done for you. He didn't say that. He just says, go your way, your son lives. Next sentence. So the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him. That's it right there. The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him. See all these words? When we believe the word that Jesus speaks to us, when we believe the word that God speaks to us, when we stand on that, when we walk in that, when we resolve to not give ground to the enemy, faith just continues to rise up in us. And then we see the power of God released in our lives. We see God moving. We see answered prayer. And we just really, really get excited about God. And I think we begin to believe at an even greater depth then. We become more immovable in our conviction and our trust in God. Our love of God just continues to grow. We are so overwhelmed with the goodness of God. The man believed the word Jesus spoke to him, and he went his way. And as he was now going down, his servant met him and told him, saying, Your son lives. Then he inquired of them the hour when he got better, and they said to him, Yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him. So the father knew that it was the same hour in which Jesus said to him, Your son lives. And he himself believed, and his whole household. There's a next step in there, isn't there? He believed the word that Jesus spoke. He's a nobleman in Herod's household. Probably motivated more out of desperation than faith. And that's perfectly all right with God. Probably more motivated out of, I'll do anything I can to save my son. I'm even going to go find that traveling rabbi that everyone's talking about, just in case there's a chance. And when Jesus says your son lives, and he believes it, and he agrees with the word that Jesus speaks, and so he heads home. But when his servant tells him that his son's fever broke at the same time that Jesus said your son lives, when that happened, there was something happened deeper in the man when he went from believing Jesus as a rabbi with extraordinary gifts of healing to the Messiah, to the Son of God. He believed deeper. There's qualities in that of him coming into a salvation relationship. It doesn't specifically say that, but he's believing deeper. And it's almost like what Jesus said, unless you see signs and wonders, you'll by no means believe. That when he knew that his son was healed, then it happened. Just what Jesus said. And he believed. So let's be people of faith. Let's really press in. Let's be active and choose to believe. We have those points of decision, whether it's about our life, what's going on in our church, whatever we're facing, we have points of decision. Let's choose to be people of faith and believe God for his promises. God bless you.